Welcome back to the show. This is Mike Willoughby with the Steel Corner. Tonight, we're going to be talking about dry fire practice for Steel Challenge. We're going to kick off tonight with another excerpt from the book, The Little Book of Talent by Daniel Coyle. And one of the biggest reasons I gravitated towards this book, and it aligns so much with what I did, and I immediately thought this book was valid, was tip number 1, stare at who you want to become. I already was doing all that, so that resonated super highly with me. Number 2, spend 15 minutes a day engraving the skill on your brain. That was my entire approach to dry fire over the last year and a half, was 15 minutes a day, every single day. Some days it was a little bit more, some days it was a little bit less. I missed a couple days here and there for life. Running 100 miles, wasn't exactly in a position to get a gun on for 15 minutes, but 99% of days I had a gun on and there was a gun in my hand getting valuable, measured, intentional practice for 15 minutes a day. So as soon as I picked up that book and I saw tip number 1 was stare at who you want to become, which is something I've always done when I'm trying to pick up a skill, and tip number 2 was spend 15 minutes a day learning your craft, I knew it was a great book. Pick it up for yourself, see what it's all about. Some really valuable stuff in here. All right, as we get into the discussion on dry fire, the way my house is set up, I have a first floor that's really just a landing area for the house. It's where the garage is. There's a couple closets down there. And then that's where I have my workout equipment, my treadmill, my bike, my rower. The weights move their way upstairs once that emptied out a little bit. But the treadmill, the bike, the rower, they all sit downstairs. So it's a little bit of a messy area. That's where I keep all my dry fire gear. That's what you're going to see in these videos. That's where I spend a lot of time. Let's check it out. What's up, guys? Mike Willoughby, the Steel Corner here. This is a little tour of my dry fire area. On the big wall, we've got the Steel Shoot banners from steelshootbanners.com. Ken Verderami's site. Got all 8 stages sitting over here on this little barbell, dumbbell, kettlebell rack. On this wall, we got some USPSA targets, IPSC targets, just arrays of different targets for different types of dry fire. Back over on this wall, what this is, every 6 months, I will go in and print out my PBs on every stage with all the divisions that I shoot. It's a little bit outdated right now, but I did just update it in December. One critical part of dry fire for me is keeping things easy and accessible. So these are my dry fire shorts. If you see videos of me dry firing, I'm probably wearing my dry fire shorts. For me, that makes it super easy. If I only have 5 minutes, I can come down here, throw the shorts on. It takes 10 seconds, grab my gun, and I'm ready to dry fire. I moved this little target stand over to the area that's approximately where the shooting box would be for the stage I'm working on. The timer's hanging off of that. We've got a random start time. For carry optics, I use a peak time as well. This is roundabout, so the peak time is 10 seconds with carry optics, 2.5 seconds per string. Right now, my peak time is set at 2.4 seconds. So that's just over that 100% mark. And then I do that. Right now, most of my dry fire with carry optics at least is right around the 100% mark. And the goal with that is when I roll up to a match, I want running at 100% at the peak times. I want that to feel normal, natural, slow. So by doing most of my dry fire and making sure that I'm within the peak times, that's going to make me more comfortable at that speed at the matches. All right, guys, let's get into some clips of some dry fire, go over some pointers and what I think about on different stages and how I execute some dry fire. Let me take you through my dry fire space. So this is the main area. We've got the Steel Shoot banners hanging up on the big wall. We've got 5 feet and 10 feet back here measured out. This line going across is 10 feet, so this is what the stage looks like from my view. Camera's at a 0.5 zoom right now though, so you can't really tell. Right beside me, whatever stage is set up, right where the shooting box would be, I set up this target stand. As you can see, it's pretty old, pretty dirty. Got my AMG Commander timer there, set up and ready to go. I stand in the box, set the timer off for a random start. and we do some dry fire. So right now, with the timer currently practicing for carry optics, my goal is to be right around 100% overall. Put you at 94 seconds. So right now that timer set up for roundabout has a 2.4 second par time on it, just over 100%, which is 2.5 seconds per string. So let's go through some dry fire here. So that's the basic gist of it. Let's run through some elements. When I'm doing dry fire, we want to replicate match conditions as much as possible. So I'm standing at the appropriate distance for the shooting box, standing centered on where the shooting box would be within the stage. My engagement order, how I stand in a box, I usually like to set up no further away than my second target. So I want to be set up naturally on roundabout, plates 1 and 2 on the left side of the stage. I'm going to be drawing to 1, but I want to be set up on 2. So my natural position when I'm standing, not twisted at all, I want to be set up on plate number 2. Then I'm going to rotate slightly to get to plate number 1, and that's how I'm going to draw. I don't want to set up any further away from plate number 1 because I don't want to be at an extreme angle. I don't want to be angling my hips like this and then trying to draw a centerfire pistol out of a holster like this. It's awkward. Not as repeatable, not as consistent. So for me, I want to start on my second target, lined up on it. Slight twist. One thing that we're paying attention to when we're doing dry fire, going back to replicating match conditions, I shoot with prescription lenses. So in dry fire, I'm wearing my glasses. I always shoot with a hat on, so in dry fire, I always have a hat on. My holster is indexed to a specific spot on my belly button to my belt, so I know exactly where my holster is, and it's always in the exact same spot. Timer, always set up on a random start time, so that way I'm not jumping the beeper, it's not a timed thing. Going into my dry fire room, a little closet over here. We've got the dry fire shorts, extremely important part of the dry fire setup. Because it doesn't matter if I have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, I can get in there, quickly throw those shorts on, and I'm in business in no time. There's no big setup time or setup cost to consider. It's just go time all the time. Using a dry fire mag from Double Alpha, keep the gun appropriately weighted. It's a little bit light, but I also don't fully stuff my mags when I'm running carry optics, so that kind of works out. So in dry fire, one of the biggest things that I'm looking for is where the dot is when that shot breaks. I'm working on my shot calling all the time in dry fire. As soon as I pull this trigger to the rear, I want to know where the dot was when that trigger broke, or in the case of a dead trigger after the first shot, when you're pulling it back and you know right around where that break point is, you should be able to tell. Critical part to that, at least with centerfire handguns, and I learned the hard way, especially with rimfire guns as well, is your weak hand grip. So your sport hand grip should be firm and established the entire time. If it's not, you're going to start yanking shots off of those plates. It's pretty easy to call your shots when your dot doesn't move because you're locked into the platform. I don't mean that literally. Of course, your dot is always going to be moving because nothing is static, especially in Steel Challenge when you're trying to move at a high rate of speed, but your dot is going to be much better controlled if you have appropriate support hand pressures on your gun. Let's go through some reps, see what it looks like. One thing I'm constantly trying to dial in, dry firing a center fire handgun out of the holster, trying to work on not crashing the holster. So what that means is I don't want to come down, press before I pull up. I want to eliminate that press down. So I want to be just coming down, grab it out of the holster and straight out. No wasted movement. That should be your goal. Of course, it doesn't always happen. You need to play with the angles of your draw, where you hold your hands, the angles that you hold your hands at. Hopefully you can eliminate as much movement as possible and just be efficient with the gun. Fumbled the draw a little bit there. It's okay. We just repeat. Know exactly what we did, so let's not do it again. Much better. A little jerky on that. It's all right. Alright guys, let's talk some rules. One thing that gets called out in the rules, but I don't hear very many people talking about it, and I don't think very many people know what it is and know what the difference is between creeping, a false start, and moving before the start. I don't think people realize what the difference is, so I've got the rule book pulled up. Let's read it right here. We are in Chapter 10, Penalties. 10.1.1, Creeping. A competitor who is creeping, example, moving hands toward the firearm or physically moving to a more advantageous shooting position or posture at the start signal, shall receive a 3-second procedural penalty if the competitor is moving prior to the start signal. He shall be stopped and restarted once still and in the correct start position. In the event that the RO cannot stop the competitor prior to the start signal, the competitor will incur a 3-second penalty. 10.1.1.1. In the event that a competitor begins his attempt at the course of fire prematurely, false start, prior to the issuance of the start signal, the range officer will, as soon as possible, stop and restart the competitor once the course of fire has been restored. Attempt means the gun is drawn and or shots fired, but the timer has not been started. So what does this mean? Creeping. If your hands are up and at the start signal, after the standby, the RO has his finger on the start signal. If you're moving towards the gun before that start signal goes off, that is creeping. If you are deaf as heck and jumpy, and you jump the timer completely, and you go to start shooting the string up to and including pulling the gun out of the holster and shooting, that's a false start. So, creeping. If you are intentionally trying to gain an advantage for speed by moving at the start signal before it goes off, that's a 3-second penalty. In my experience, I have never seen that penalty issued. I have seen ROs reset a shooter like it talks about if they're moving before the start signal. And it's very specific that creeping is when you are moving towards the firearm or a more advantageous shooting position at the start signal. The at is bolded. Alright? That is creeping. A false start is when a competitor begins his attempt at the course of fire prematurely. So think about those things next time you're ROing somebody. Think about those things next time you accidentally jump the timer. So on a false start, the correct thing to do is to completely stop them, have them reset, and then start the string over. That string does not count if they jumped the timer. It's not a penalty, but it doesn't count. Now, if they're just trying to speed up their draw by getting closer to the gun, you can assign a 3-second penalty. But I've never seen it done. I don't know that many people do it. So that's our rules for the day. Thought it was interesting. And yeah, it's always a good discussion. All right, guys, that's all I got for you today. It's after midnight. I really suck at this video editing stuff. It's taking me forever. So hopefully that speeds up over time with this podcast. Got an actual desk coming because right now all this is sitting on a foldable card table that doesn't support this mic stand, which is why it's collapsing into me right now. So look forward to see where this goes. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Shoot, guys, I almost forgot my favorite segment, FUD Lore of the Day. So FUD Lore of the Day today is going to be about oiling the ever-living crap out of your PCCs and rimfire guns. I don't think those people shoot centerfire guns, but you know who I'm talking about. They shoot a few shots and it looks like their gun is on fire because there's so much smoke pouring out because they had oil all over the action of that gun. It shouldn't be necessary for your gun to run, and if it is, you probably need to do some work. Maybe some polishing, maybe some stoning, maybe you need to replace a spring. I don't know. But your gun should not require a bottle of oil to run correctly. That's the FUD lore of the day. Don't douse your guns in oil. Figure out why they're not running if they're not. You can use oil as a temporary stopgap if they're starting to malfunction during a match. But in general, for me and my experience, you shouldn't need a whole gallon of oil on your guns to make them run correctly.